Good afternoon. Today is the 20th day of January 2016, and we embark on a new series entitled Fine Poetry. Poems from poets who may not be included in the new poetry, but whose poems carry great depth. The first one is a relatively unknown poet, Daniel Whitehead Hickey, called the Atlanta Poet. And this is an article written by a friend, and I could not find the name, but yes, it's Rel Davis, I believe. The name was Rel Davis, and it's entitled Memories. And Davis writes, I worked for several years in Washington, D.C. as a public information officer with the Department of Agriculture. Public information is a euphemism, of course, for press agentry. We put out press releases and pamphlets, radio and TV commercials, and fielded questions from the press. One of my fellow employees there was not like the rest of us, who were mainly professional journalists with newspaper or broadcast backgrounds. This was Jack Hickey, an older gentleman with the soft voice and gentle manners of a Southern aristocrat. Outside of work, we would see him in the company of some duchess or countess, or being idolized by the city's elite. But in the office, he was not treated so well. Jack was looked down upon by most of the others in our office as a non-professional in a specialist's world. He was not, after all, a working journalist and had never walked a newspaper beat. All he was, after all, was probably one of the finest poets to ever come out of the state of Georgia. His real name was Daniel Whitehead Hickey. I like to joke that he was the only employee of the federal government who was quoted in the current edition of Bartlett's, which was true. Jack had published at least 5 books of poetry by this time. He was nearing retirement when I knew him in the 1960s, had won numerous prizes for poetry, lectured at major universities, and was acknowledged not only to be a leading poet, but to be what one critic called the leading lyric voice of the American South. Yet he was forced to work at a menial job with the government in order to pay his bills. This simply demonstrates the awesome failure of our society's value structure. We seem perfectly content to make millionaires of hulking sports figures and brainless movie stuntmen, and I think it only fair that the people who educate our children and prepare them for the future be paid relative pittances. We bestow fortunes on television evangelists with their permed hairdos and $1,000 suits, and are quite content that many small-town clergy, the ones who marry us and bury us and listen to our daily woes, live at or below the poverty level. We bestow great wealth on horror-writing hacks and subject our poets to working menial tasks to keep alive. I suppose it shouldn't be looked on as so bad that Daniel Whitehead Hickey had to work as a clerk for the government. So did Walt Whitman in his early years. For Jack, however, It was during his later years. The rumor mills always insisted that Jack Hickey was gay. The older women, generally members of Europe's aristocracy, often seen on his arm at cocktail parties, were, it was alleged, only a front. It was these rumors that brought down the investigators on poor Jack's head. They tapped his phone and the phone of his supervisor in an attempt to expose Jack's homosexuality. After months of this, they could find no evidence to support the accusations. Whoever made the accusations originally, we never learned. Though they found enough to charge him with violations of federal regulations. His crime? He was caught taking lunch breaks longer than the allowed 30 minutes. The fact that most employees took longer lunches, it took 30 minutes just to get to the nearest cafeteria, was ignored. After all, as an accused homosexual, he was subjected to tighter scrutiny than other employees. The director of our division, the information division, of course, we always joked about running a beauty contest and electing Miss Information, refused to fine Jack for such an unjust cause, so a compromise was reached. Jack's supervisor was reprimanded for not supervising Jack properly, and Jack was transferred to another unit, my office. Most supervisors didn't want him working for them. He was slow, they said. He couldn't put out a press release in 15 minutes in an emergency. I, on the other hand, was happy to be working with him. Jack could brighten up an office in a minute with that special twinkle in his eye, and you couldn't ask for a better proofreader. He really knew the English language. He's nearly forgotten today, sadly. All his books are out of print. A prime copy of his Never the Nightingale can run up to $200 from rare book dealers. But he shouldn't be forgotten, and he wouldn't have had we not lived in such a Philistine world. Back in the winter of 1963, I was trying to start an independent literary publication, a complete failure, I'm sorry to say, and Jack offered me 2 of his then current works for inclusion in that magazine. Both dealt with snow, so they were probably written while he lived in D.C. Because he gave permission then, I am taking the liberty of publishing them here as well, in hopes that they will give you an understanding of the kind of poet he was, and because immortality for writers really arises only when our writings are read and appreciated. In my mind, Jack will always be fully alive, both in the image of him exchanging witty conversation with a crowd of admirers while a bejeweled countess from some obscure European country hangs tightly to his arm, and in the wonderful words of his poetry that will not leave my mind. I might mention here that I collected some of Hickey's books, but I have them in the U.S. and was not able to bring them this time. But perhaps in the future we can read some more of them. The first poem is Ad Interim. Piercing the dark clouds, always this bright clearing hovers above the meadows of my mind. With each recurrent daybreak, I am hearing no dearth of lark song arrowing the wind. There is no lack of wildflowers on the hills, no brook grown fainter with its crystal notes, and, breathing deep of twilight, my heart fills still with the fragrance of the lilies' throats. Young lovers, arm in arm and eyes alight, seek out their shadowy lanes beneath the shower of stars, unfolding like a dream begun. The sun climbs up the east, its appointed hour. Nothing has changed but gold. What is gold to one who holds his world against his heart tonight? Wisdom. I say that I am wise, yet dead leaves know more secrets than my heart can ever guess. I stand before a crocus loveliness, a sword of fire thrust upward in the snow, and I can never say what embers glow beneath this frozen earth. I must confess, a child could stand here with but little less of knowledge at the seasons' ebb and flow. This barren hill holds fast dark sleeping seeds, whose fragrance soon shall still the blood, yet wise in words and ways of men and creeds. I cannot know one purple twilight's plan, unraveling the crimson of one bud. I tremble at the ignorance of man. Rainy night. This is a night for long rememberings. Light up the fire and watch each ripening spark drift like a firefly where the chimney sings with all the purple mystery of dark. This is a night for books. Turn to a page that throbs with Aprils that were lost. Go deep in folded letters yellowing with age. A night of rain is not a night for sleep. Pile up the hearth with cedar boughs and listen to silver music flashing on the pane. Speak long forgotten words, and they will glisten, wrapped in their vanished glory once again. Turn back the clock, and till the break of dawn, your heart will beat with hours that are gone. When a man turns homeward through the moonfall, when a man turns homeward through the moonfall, swift in his path like a meteor bright, kindling his wonder and blinding his sight, his feet will go on, his heartbeats will call, deep in his breast like quick music, and all the darkness that swirls like a flame of dead light cannot fetter his feet turned homeward at night. Past thicket and trees like a towering wall, he will go on over hillside and stone, clinging like hope to the road that he knows, groping along like a shadow alone. He will reach for the latch where a candle, gold-eyed, watches with her for the door that will close, leaving the world like a kitten outside. No friend like music. There is no whispering of any friend, no solace that can touch the quivering heart in that lone hour when a sudden end has captured laughter and there falls apart a rainbow that has bridged a distant hill. When roses shatter on the stem and dark crowds out the candle's shimmering flame, and still the night creeps on with neither torch nor spark. No friend like music when the last word's spoken, and every pleading is a plea in vain. No friend like music when the heart is broken, to mend its wings and give it flight again. No friend like music, breaking chains and bars, to let the soul march with the quiet stars. A poem about the Georgia coast and the shrimp boats, entitled Nocturne. The shrimping boats are late today. The dusk has caught them cold. Swift darkness gathers up the sun, and all the beckoning gold that guides them safely into port is lost beneath the tide. Now the lean moon swings overhead, and Venus salty-eyed. They will be late an hour or more, the fishermen, blaming dark's swift mischief or the stubborn sea. But as their lantern sparks ride shoreward at the foam's white rim, until they reach the pier, I cannot say if their catch is shrimp or fireflies burning clear. In this poem, War Has Its Day, we come upon some very powerful lines. War has its day. Each generation knows the stricken field, the city sacked by fire, its crawling refugees, the child that goes with cannon-lighted eyes from pyre to pyre, cathedrals packed with worshippers too late to summon God above the battle's thunder. No sea, but in due time, has borne the weight of blood upon its waters, men sucked under. So it has always been. But, warring done, child that he is, man will return at last, shamefaced and prodigal, and once again, as though at some new wonder from the east, bewildered, stare upon a sparrow's wing, a snowdrop pressing at the heart of spring. Machines. I hear them grinding, grinding through the night. The gaunt machines with arteries of fire, muscled with iron, bowled with smoldering light. I watch them pulsing, swinging, climbing higher. Derrick on derrick, wheel on rhythmic wheel. Swift hand on whirring band, lever on lever, shouting their songs in raucous notes of steel. Blinding a village with light, damming a river. I hear them grinding, grinding, hour on hour, cleaving the night in twain, shattering the dark with all the rasping torrents of their power, groaning and belching spark on crimson spark. I cannot hear my voice above their cry, shaking the earth and thundering to the sky. Slowly the dawn comes up. No motors stir. The heightening hilltops as the sunrise flows in yellow tides where daybreak's lavender clings to a waiting valley. No derrick throws the sun into the heavens, and no pulley unfolds the wildflowers thirsting for the day. No wheel unravels ferns deep in a gully. No engine starts the brook upon its way. The butterflies drift idly, wing to wing, knowing no measured rhythm they must follow. No turbine drives the white clouds as they swing across the cool blue meadows of the swallow, with all the feathered silence of a swan. They whir and beat the engines of the dawn. This poem about the Okefenokee swamp. Okefenokee is an American Indian word. I have been in swamps like this in Louisiana, and here Hickey catches it exactly right. Okefenokee swamp. Here is a world which slowed the hands of time, choked back the seasons, the minutes, and the hours, bound east and west by crocodile and slime, northward and south by cypress and scarlet flowers. Here thin moons ripen as a lily will, shredded by shadows on the blackened glass of stagnant rivers. Slumbering copperheads coil where spiders break green backbones of the grass. There is a music here, lost long to man, silence beyond a mortal's heart to know, flash of swift wings afire, the secret span of feathers drifting white as drifts of snow. Yet always fear, fear burning when quiets cease, over the hyacinths breathing with guarded breath, this wild world knowing, as other worlds, that peace trembles red-eyed before the claws of death. When we visited these bayous, these blackened waterways, we saw all kinds of poisonous snakes. And the hyacinths that he mentions in the poem are the water hyacinths that multiply with great rapidity. But they also have a very unique quality. They are the only plant that is able to extract heavy metals from water. The last poem, for now, is, I think, the poem that most people would know something of Daniel Whitehead Hickey and his elegant way with words. And the beauty of his lines. Snow silence. Before me and behind me stretched the day. To east and west, a meadowland of gray. The wind blew sharp and scratched among the boughs. Slow smoke breathed from the chimney of each house. A bird flew past me with no greeting said. The road beneath my feet grew hard as lead. And from the gullies there I saw a light, as eyes of rabbits stared into the night. Sheltered beneath a frozen vine, their fur so soft, no blade of grass made any stir. I passed a farmer turning in his lane. He looked my way but once, and not again. Then hurried on, and with no word for me, nor pondered on whose neighbor I might be. And thus I learned from man and bird a wing, snow silence is a sort of holy thing.